record our session. So welcome everybody to our cohort for the spring semester for our pedagogy training. It's great to be here with you all. We're going to be taking turns presenting to you our different unit modules. I'm going to go ahead and begin. My name is Beth Cliffel. I'm a faculty member in the science department. I teach in the area of biology as well as biotechnology. I've been teaching online for close to 10 years now. I completed the ION training for online teaching and have been a part of this pedagogy training now for the last year. So I'm very grateful to be here with you all. I'm going to be covering Module 1. So what I would like to do is kind of first show you guys a little bit about the module. I know that everybody's kind of logged in, and hopefully you've been finding your way, navigating through the different materials and resources that are available to you. And then I'm going to spend most of my time talking about the deliverable for Module 1, which is the course content map. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and switch to screen sharing with you guys so that we can take just a couple of minutes to look at this module. So that way you can understand the resources that are available to you and really what you're responsible for out of all of those resources. So going over to our course page, typically when you first enter, you're going to kind of be taken to this welcome screen, which is going to have this video here that Kevin put together as our instructional designer. But I want to draw your attention over here to our menu on the left-hand side. I'm going to specifically go into our course materials folder. And I'm going to be working on this online course design basics, which is the first module of this training. Let me go ahead and get that out of our way. So just a few things that I want to show you. First and foremost, when you first enter a different unit, you're going to find the contact information at the very top here. Turn that off really quick. The contact information for the person who's responsible for that module. So again, for me, my name is Beth Cliffel. You can see my email address here for any questions that you might have for this module. Just below that, you have an overview as well as some unit objectives just to kind of create an outline or framework for that module. And then there's a to-do list. And specifically for Module 1, because it can be a little bit confusing because we add a lot of additional resources to this module. Just to be clear, the things that you're required to do are to watch the online course design basics videos and then complete the course content map. Again, I'll be going over that deliverable in just a little bit. What you'll also notice is I've kind of reflected in my note to you here that there's a lot of additional resources that you might find useful in constructing your online courses. So these are the online course design basics videos that I was referring to. There's a total of 3. And then just underneath those video links, you'll find a link to our assignment. You'll always know that it's an assignment because it'll have this kind of an icon with a ruler and a pencil and a little piece of paper. Now, there are a lot of different attachments associated with this assignment. The actual document itself, this is the one you're going to be working from, so it's titled the Course Content Mapping Document. I've given you an example as well as the rubric I use to score those assignments. And then I also have a detailed set of instructions here, which is basically I'm going to show you the same stuff I'm going to walk you through in our session here this morning, or this afternoon, I guess. Now, just underneath this information, you also have a lot of additional resources. Again, these are really there for you to use as you see fit. So these first resources are there in case you find yourself needing to construct some learning objectives for your class. And we'll talk a lot more about that in just a little bit. And then underneath that, you have some additional tools, especially if you're not familiar with Blackboard or you're kind of trying to understand how to create a more aesthetically appealing class. There's some ways that we can embed videos and images to kind of create a cleaner look. And that's where these additional videos are going to come into play. Now, you'll also notice this causes some confusion in this module, but at the very bottom, you have this resource course information and syllabus template. You don't actually have to do anything with this template, but it can be very useful in helping to construct a syllabus that's a little bit more interactive and easier for students to find the pertinent information for your class. So if we go ahead and click on this link, it'll actually show you kind of the different elements of the syllabus that you can build for your students to be able to navigate that syllabus more clearly. First, you have just a printable version of the syllabus that you could include. So this would be the same syllabus that you would give in your in-person classes. But then you'll notice that the different elements of the syllabus are broken down into their own independent pages. So it's almost like you can take each piece of your syllabus and create its own page so that it's, again, a little bit more easy to navigate for your students. So this is really just there as a template for you. Again, you don't have to do anything with this, but I just wanted to point it out in case you do find that useful. So now that we've taken a look at the module and the resources that are provided in that module, before I jump into explaining more about the deliverable for this module, which again is that course content map, I would like to just take a moment to pause to see if there's any questions from our participants at this point. All right, so I'm going to take the silence as a no and then switch over to sharing my file with you guys then so we can take a closer look at the course content map. Of course, if you do have questions, please feel free to raise your hand or use the chat feature at any point in time, and I'd be more than happy to address those questions. So again, for Module 1, the idea is that you're going to create what we refer to as a course content map. As you might imagine, a map is kind of a guide, right, to get you from point A to point B. In this case, the intention of this map is to create a clear idea, or clear plan, I should say, of how it is that you teach the learning objectives that you cover in your particular class. So when you actually open up that course content mapping document, you're going to see something that looks like this. And so some pretty straightforward information. Obviously, you have where you're going to put your course name. If you could also, when you include your course name, if you could give me the 3-digit code and the letter designation, the letter and number designation for your class, it makes it a lot easier for me to locate your course outline so that I can kind of compare it to what you've put here in your course map. Of course, I do want to also know who you are. This should be pretty obvious within the submission because it will be submitted under your name in Blackboard, but just to make sure it's on the document itself. And then just beneath that, you're going to find 2 sections that you're going to need to take essentially from the course outline. These course outlines, for those of you that are not familiar, are the documents that are approved by the curriculum committee that really are a way for us to verify what is being taught in each of our courses. And the content is really clearly outlined in these course outlines by providing what are known as course learning objectives, as well as the topical learning outcomes. Now, these course learning outcomes that you can see right here at the very top of your course content map, right? Those are going to correlate to what's known as the overall learning outcomes on your course outline. So this is kind of like the big picture. Like if you had to tell someone in just a couple of sentences what your class is all about, that's really the point of those outcomes. Now, in addition to that, so this is just going to be copied and pasted right over from the course outline, which is why you're going to first, to complete this assignment, need to locate and download that course outline if you don't have it already. The other piece of information that you're going to take from those course outlines are those topical learning outcomes. And that's what's going to correlate to this column of our course map, which is known as the learning objectives. And so this is a more kind of topic by topic breakdown of what specifically you're covering over the course of the semester. So these, while they're going to be copied and pasted directly from your course outline, are going to, so the part of the course content map where you're going to show your own creativity and your own kind of approach to your teaching is when you complete this instructional strategy, method of delivery, and method for assessment column of the course outline. Now, as you can see here, when it comes to instructional strategy, there's kind of several categories that reflect our general approach to how we go about teaching a particular topic. So, for example, in my class, a lot of times I would lecture on a particular topic. That would be an example of direct instruction. I might use a PowerPoint, right, as my method of delivery for that lecture. I might show that alongside maybe a short YouTube video to illustrate. So there's kind of a direct correlation between these instructional strategies and these methods of delivery. We'll take a closer look at those in just a few moments. And then finally, you have your methods for assessment. Of course, as you are well aware, assessment is an integral component of any well-constructed class. And there's a variety of different assessment methods that you probably use to determine whether or not your students are learning what you expect them to learn. And that's what you're going to detail in this last column. So before we kind of focus more on these three columns of the course content map, I want to just go back to these course learning outcomes and these learning objectives to make sure that you know where to find that information and what you're going to do with that information once you do find it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to screen sharing with you guys for just a moment so that I can show you how to locate your course outline, and then I'll show you some images of what a course outline looks like, particularly as it pertains to these two pieces of information so that you know what in that course outline you're trying to find. So let me go back over to screen sharing. Give me just one moment for that. And looks like that was successful. So all of these course outlines are actually housed by the curriculum committee. You can find them on your portal. So from your portal, so this is kind of the home page of your portal, at the very top where you see these faculty resources, if you kind of hover over faculty resources, it will open up a pull down menu, and you're going to come right over here to curriculum. And then once you click on that, you'll notice that over here all the way to the bottom right hand side where you see this resources and links, there is a link to course outlines. So when you click on this, what you'll notice is that all of the course outlines are going to be organized by discipline. And so when I click on, say, biological sciences, which is the discipline that I teach in, when I click on that, it'll show me a list of all of the course outlines within that discipline, and then you can just simply click on the course outline that you're interested in, and it will download that outline for you. This is the currently approved outline, so hopefully it should have been kind of updated within the last couple of years. And again, once you get this course outline, you're interested in a couple of key pieces of information. The first piece of information is these overall learning outcomes. Again, that's going to correlate to that first segment on your course content map. And then those learning objectives are going to correlate. If you continue to scroll down in your course outline, you'll come to this table at the very end, which is the topical outline. And again, you'll see over here on the right-hand side, there's this column for topical learning outcomes. Again, this is a breakdown of topic by topic, specifically what you help your students to learn as you go through the semester. So again, going back one more time now to my presentation. Well, first of all, does anybody have any questions on how to access those course outlines now that I've taken just a couple of minutes to show you how to do that? Right, now, of course, all of this is reiterated in those instruction files that I put together in the assignment link itself. But just to make sure that it's clear, again, taking a zoomed in look at these course outlines. Again, when we look at the course content map and you see that section of course learning outcomes at the very top, that's going to correlate to these overall learning outcomes, which are taken from the course outline itself. Now, the other component you're taking from the course outline, again, are those topical learning outcomes. That's from that table that I just showed you. Those are going to correlate to the learning objectives in your course content map. So again, taking a look one more time at that course content map. Again, here we have the course learning outcomes that correlates to the overall learning outcomes on the course outline. And then down here, we have the learning objectives that correlates to the topical learning outcomes from that table on the course outline. So to summarize the process of completing this course content map, The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to figure out what course you, of course, want to examine. For those of you that teach several classes, you may have to just choose one to focus on. If you just teach one class, then it makes it pretty easy. Once you've identified the class you want to work on, you download that current course outline by going to that curriculum site as I just showed you. The next thing you're going to do is copy the overall learning outcomes. Again, that's going to correlate to that first part of that course content map that's known as the course learning outcomes. And then you're going to decide how you want to copy and paste over all of those topical learning outcomes. A lot of people like to kind of correlate it directly with how it's outlined in the course outline. So you can kind of think about how you generally approach teaching your class. So for example, for some of my classes, I might kind of go week by week. Like, what is the topic I cover in week 1? What is the topic I cover in week 2? And then I would go to my course outline and I would copy the learning outcomes that correlate to my week 1 content. So when you look at, one more time, going back to that course content map, you'll notice that the left-hand column is all about modules. These modules can be organized in any way that you see fit. So if you want to go week by week, you might have 16 modules. If instead you have kind of topics that you chunk your class by, then you would just kind of organize the modules by topic. For example, when I teach anatomy and physiology, I might organize it by body system. And so that would kind of correlate to one module. So based on how you organize those modules, that's where you're going to kind of copy over those those topical learning outcomes as they correlate to those modules that you've organized. Now, this is where the fun stuff comes into play. So once you've kind of done all of that copying and pasting and all of that organizing, now it's time for you to reflect on how it is that you would teach all of those learning objectives. That's a great question, Christopher. You can do that. Thank you for asking that. You can change the module to weeks if you prefer. You can change it to topics if you prefer. You'll notice that the course content map kind of defaults to 12 different modules. There's not really a particular rhyme and reason for that, so you can kind of organize it as you see fit. Again, if you want to do it week by week, that's a good way to strategize and organize. If you prefer to do it in a different way, it's really just about how you approach your particular class. Thank you for asking that. Any other questions? Did that clarify, by the way? Yep. Yeah, so Jackie uses one module per week. Yep, no problem. Like I said, for one of my classes, I would do it week by week. For another class, just because of the nature of the content, I kind of organize it a little bit differently because it takes me about a week and a half to go through, say, a body system in anatomy and physiology. So I would have, you know, fewer modules in that particular class. Great question. Now, if there's no other questions, as I was mentioning, the kind of fun part of the course content map is to try to reflect on how you teach all of that information, right? And this is where you really get to show and be introspective in how it is that you achieve the goals that the course outline is setting out for that particular class. As you reflect on the instructional strategies that you use, the methods that you use to deliver that information, as well as how you assess student learning. So that's where those last three columns of the course content map come into play. And again, this is where a lot of what you're learning through this training can also be applied. And that's one thing that I want to highlight about this course content map is that it's there, even though it's kind of given to you in module 1, it doesn't have to be done first. The course content map should be completed by the end of the training. And so that way, if you find or discover new learning or new teaching techniques as you're going through this training that you want to apply to your class, you can incorporate those into your course content map. The other thing that's important to keep in mind is that this course content map is not a stagnant document. It should be iterative. It should be continually refined as you learn kind of what works best, as you kind of gain knowledge about new teaching practices. The idea is that you want to kind of keep revising this so that it always reflects how you're approaching your teaching of that particular class. But to make it a little bit clear how we kind of delineate the different categories, I'm going back to looking at the course content map. You'll notice that these last three columns here, the instructional strategy, the method of delivery, and the method for assessment, there's some information kind of provided in the map itself, but I want to take a closer look at each category just to make sure you have a clear understanding of what is intended to be in each of those categories. So first, when it comes to instructional strategies, generally speaking, there are 5 different instructional strategies that are recognized. Again, with direct instruction, the assumption is that you are directly giving the information to the students. With indirect instruction, you might be using a different vessel other than yourself to provide that information, like a textbook reading or a video that they need to watch. But there's still kind of the student listening, kind of absorbing that information. In comparison to this, with independent study, this is when you expect students to kind of take the learning process more on their own. So they have the onus of the learning process. You might give them a topic to investigate or maybe a case study to reflect on, and they kind of are learning that and kind of being kind of the directors of their learning in that case. With interactive instruction, as the name implies, it's a little bit more dynamic. There's kind of more feedback from your students and more the students contributing to the learning process. And then with experiential learning, it's a little bit more hands-on. So lab work is a really good example of experiential learning. So you may lean kind of heavily on one type of instruction or another. Most of the time we try to use multiple instructional strategies so that we can target the different learning styles that our students come into our classrooms with. Now, what you'll also notice, though, is that these instructional strategies are going to correlate directly with your method of delivery. So, for example, one of the most common types of direct instruction is lecture. With interactive instruction, you might have more of a discussion. With experiential learning, you might be having a lab assignment, right? Or some type of more application or hands-on type of experience for the students to engage with the learning process. So regardless of the method of delivery, right, the idea is that you want to make sure you're trying to, again, target the different learning styles that our students have so that you vary the ways that you're delivering the information to them. Now, once you have decided upon your method of delivery and you have kind of given your students that information, you also want to know how much they're actually absorbing, and that's where the method of assessment comes into play. Much like the method of delivery, you want to try to be as varied as possible so that you are, again, targeting different students and their different strengths. And we should also see a correlation between these methods of assessment and the method of delivery. So if I am using experiential learning by having my students do lab activities, then it makes sense that I would also have them complete and submit a lab report as a reflection of whether or not they were able to successfully do that lab. And so you see kind of a list of different methods for assessment here. This is by no means an exhaustive list. It's really just to kind of get you thinking about some of the different types of assessment methods that are available to you that you can use to evaluate students' learning. So I'm sure that you guys have a lot of other ideas for methods of delivery, methods for assessment, and I look forward to kind of seeing what you put together for your own classes. But this hopefully just gives you a clear idea of the expectations for this deliverable for the Module 1. Thank you so much, Christopher. So you don't have to do a rubric for this because this is really more just an overall outline. So instead of this being you know, like a specific assignment that you're giving your students, it should be a general overview of what you're doing for the whole semester. And on that note, one additional thing to kind of keep in mind, in addition to trying to vary the methods of delivery and methods for assessment, it's also important that you try to provide as much detail in these course content maps as possible, so that if someone was kind of new to teaching this class and really wasn't sure where to start, you could hand them the course content map And they could say, oh, okay, this is a clear kind of guide to how I could successfully teach this class myself. So instead of, for example, telling me that you're going to use a chapter reading in your textbook. So instead of saying like chapter 1, you can say like, what is the topic that they're going to be reading about? Instead of telling me that you're going to use a case study for the assessment method, maybe tell me a little bit about that case study. What is the kind of focus of that case study, right? Just to make it a little bit clearer what again is being done at each step of the process. Any other questions? Yeah, of course. Thank you for the questions, Chris. These are great questions. All right. Well, I will then turn the time over to Joe so that he can tell you a little bit about assessment in Module 4, I believe. And of course, just want to reiterate that if you do have any questions about Module 1 or this course content map, that I am here to help you. So please don't hesitate to reach out. My pleasure, Jasmine.
All right, so hi, my name is Joe Boykel. I'm also in the biology department with Beth. I've been at Triton since 2006, and I've been teaching online courses since 2008. So decent amount of history there. Started way back when we were on WebCT, and it was a whole different ball game back then. Thankfully, the technology has definitely improved since then. I got my ION certification, and I'm also on the peer review committee. So in the future, if you're looking at developing new online courses, updating some of our existing ones, we might cross paths again in that venue. So I'm going to focus on assessment, the different aspects of that, particularly in online setting. We maybe plan for it and include different types of activities, particularly since it's not synchronous. That being said, I don't have all the answers. Constantly trying new things. The courses are changing all of the time, and especially as new technology and software and capabilities arise, it opens up new options for us. So it's constantly changing, and for the most part, it's improving and it's helping us and the students. So that's the good news. In the Blackboard Shell itself, again, there is videos like Beth mentioned previously that will go over some of these details more in depth. What I'm going to be focusing on is kind of the overview of these main categories of types of assessment, what we call formative and summative assessments, and primarily going to be focusing on the formative side of things. As we've done these sessions, it seems like people have more of an intuitive sense and familiarity with the summative side of assessment. The typical unit exams, the final exam, a midterm exam, maybe some type of research project, a big essay that you have to do. If you have an accreditor agency, maybe there's some kind of standardized exam that the students have to pass. So most people are a bit more familiar with that. They understand, the tools, the quiz and exam features in Blackboard that you can use to help you out. What tends to happen a lot more in your face-to-face classes are a lot of these more informative types of assessments, the formative side, where you're really gauging how students are learning, if they're understanding this or not. Do you need to review some of the material more? And so that's where, particularly where you don't necessarily have that face-to-face contact with them in the online setting, that you maybe want to kind of design this in, build it into your course to be able to get that feedback from students and also help inform them. How are they doing? Give them some idea of, what they're understanding or not before we get to one of those exams where they bomb it, and then it's too late to fix it at that point. So what can we do to prepare them before that point? And also for the instructor, how can we identify what those students are struggling with, maybe need a little bit more help before it's too late to correct it. So just kind of a quick overview of some of the differences between these two. This formative, this is during the learning process. So we're doing this often very frequently to identify where are the strengths and weaknesses of our students. Where the summative, that's kind of at the end, right? Whether it's at the end of the unit or at the end of the semester. This is really to help those students, get their grade and show what they've learned. Where on the formative side, it's more of monitoring that learning progress, seeing, are they understanding this or not? Or do we need to review this some more? Do they need some additional practice on this? Where are those deficiencies? The whole goal of this formative assessment is to improve their learning. And so when it comes to scores on this, the summative side of things, much more it's the typical letter grades, percentages that people are familiar with. Formative, there's a variety of strategies instructors might take. Often it's maybe more of kind of that participation type grade. As long as students complete this, maybe they get the points for it. Not necessarily whether they're correct or incorrect on responses. It's more of helping them just figure out what do you understand or not. And you often maybe don't want to penalize that grade-wise. It's more of trying to help them figure out what they need to understand better. But it's open to you how you want to structure that, what those grades are based off of. If it's not worth grades, frequently students tend to blow it off. So I've found even if it's minimal, where it's fractions of a % of their overall grade, once you put points on it though, it seems like students tend to take it more seriously. So if it's purely optional, they don't have to do it, doesn't impact it at all. I often see the only ones that do it are the ones that probably need it the least. So having some type of skin in the game, some type of points that it counts for is useful in my experience, but it's up to you how you want to structure that. Chris, yep, you get to experience both sides of this semester, yep. So hopefully you can see putting some of this stuff into practice. So the scale differences between these formative assessments, again, you can do this in your face-to-face class or in an online setting. Things like muddiest point, or have students identify what was the most confusing part of the lecture today. Do those little types of recaps to see what they took away, what did they struggle with, and that self-assessment can help them really kind of reflect on what was going on in class today, that they're not just sitting there daydreaming, keeps them a little bit more accountable for what's going on there. Where again, that summative, this is often multiple chapters at a time, so the breadth and depth is often much deeper. This formative, again, frequently this process is repetitive. You do this frequently. Again, students get an understanding of, okay, we do this, and there's something to be said about variety and keeping interest, but there's also something about having some type of pattern, repetition. We were talking about weekly deadlines here, and you're free to design your course anyway, but having some type of consistent schedule really seems to help students stay on top of things and understand when things are due. If it changes every week, you have 5 days for this, 2 days for this, it can be a bit more challenging to make it clear what the expectations are, I think. So, a lot of these tools that we're talking about, you can use it and just adapt and modify it many different ways. So when we're talking about things like a discussion rubric, your topic of the rubric, or the topic that you're discussing in the discussion board changes week to week. But you can often use that same grading rubric for it over and over again. So it's just one thing you have to develop. All right, quick little, I'm just going to go over some of these tools that I found are useful. There's a wide range of these out here. I'm just going to hit a few of these. Something like this Poll Everywhere tool, I use this both in my online courses and in face-to-face courses as a quick way to get some some feedback from students about how they're doing and understanding this. So you can use it in either type of setting that's going on, but it's a quick way to get some feedback, especially, you know, say in like the extended remote learning setting we had previously, maybe at a classroom full of students that are there, but likely only maybe a handful of people are really regularly volunteering information, turning their microphones on, participating. So this is a good way to help get some of those people more involved. Maybe they're hesitant to raise their hand, offer an opinion, do that, but they maybe feel a bit more comfortable offering their knowledge and understanding of this in kind of this a bit more anonymous way of getting some feedback. And as you and the instructor, then you can see, oh, how is the class doing real quickly. It doesn't take a whole lot of time if it's a live session, and you can even do this asynchronously, but you can get those results and feedback and see how people are doing. So I'll play a quick, short little video on this.
I'm hosting a meeting remotely, and let's just say improvements could be made. What does everybody think about this outreach project? Anyone? Anyone at all? Shout it out. Or, hey everybody! So, I started using Poll Everywhere. With Poll Everywhere, I can ask all sorts of questions. Multiple choice, open-ended, yes or no, and make it easy for everyone to participate. On a scale of 1 to 10, how empowered are we feeling after Motivation Monday? They can answer online or by text, and the results are available instantly in real time. And I can even share my screen to share the results. So instead of wondering what people are thinking, we can identify important topics and have better conversations. Let's talk about professional development. It's great for online classes and webinars too. All right, everybody, let's take a quiz. What does Poll Everywhere do? With Poll Everywhere, I can see what my audience is actually retaining, so I know which areas need more explanation. Poll Everywhere makes remote meetings more productive. That's right! And to increase participation, I can even send the survey link in advance. Stop sitting through remote meetings that aren't even remotely productive. See what I did there? Get live feedback that helps you have better remote meetings. Poll Everywhere. Sign up and get started today. Now, where's that end meeting button? Oh, there it is.
So let me show you a little bit what some of these can look like. You can do this standalone, or you can do this where it ties into like a PowerPoint presentation. Students, you know, have this option of using a website or a text message option, depending on the question type you do. Multiple choice, true, false, those kinds of things. You can do either. Some of them where it's like image and they have to click on certain areas. The text message option's not there, but they've got a wide range of question types. It's pretty versatile for whatever type of question you might want to do. It's maybe a bit more designed for kind of that live session where you're doing it. You want that really quick feedback. But as they mentioned, you can do it asynchronously as well if you want. It's free. There's no charge for our class sizes. It works perfectly fine having the free account. And so it's been a useful tool for me. You can do like there is some built-in polling features in this Collaborate session that we have too. The biggest drawback is you have to type every question out, whereas like these types of questions, you can preload, they're there, so you're not taking a lot of time. Although you can kind of tie it together too. If you are doing a PowerPoint, you know, you can have it there with your Collaborate session. It's just, it would have to be more of that synchronous type of session going on. Here's a few other types of things, especially if you want like students to kind of do some practice on their own. These Pear Deck, Padlet, Flipgrids, a lot of these are kind of some of these review type flashcard ways that students can create this to review that information. They can share it with each other. So a lot of tools there, again, more of that kind of self-study help. Kahoot is another one that I use. Again, both in my face-to-face and online I've used this. But it's kind of that like sports bar trivia game type setting where the question is given to the students and then based on the faster they respond with the correct answer, the more points they get. And so you create a little competition here. Again, you can do this remotely or in face-to-face setting. Help them. Often I see this as a useful tool before that exam. Do a review of some of that information, help them understand, oh, I'm bombing on all these questions, I'm not getting it right. I can review that stuff before the exam comes so that I don't do poorly then. Again, free, all of these resources here. There's no charge for any of these. And a lot of things like Kahoot has a lot of these that other instructors have already created. And so you can just take those and adapt it for your courses as well. You don't have to start from scratch. There's a lot of existing information out there already for you. All right, so just quick check Q&A on this. Anybody have any questions? I'm gonna pop over into a browser and show some of the things in Blackboard quick, but just want to see, anybody have any questions at this point of the presentation? Okay, if not, Chris, this might look a little familiar here to you, but here's just one of my courses. What I want to focus on is the rubric tool in particular. So our assignment for this one is going to be looking at using a rubric to assess some of this. Again, you can choose to do either a formative assessment activity or a summative assessment, but the rubric tool in Blackboard can help you in these evaluations. So if you scroll down, you'll have a drop down here with the course tools. If you click on that and expand and then go down to this rubric option here, you might have some preloaded. I think often there is some of these that come by default in your shell. You can import in here, so you can search online for these and just import some of these as well, and you can create your own from scratch if you want. Let me just show you an example of one of these. So here you can give a little description here, and then the rubric itself, you can make this as simple or as complex as you want to do. If it's something like a weekly discussion post, maybe it's a fairly simple grading rubric that you have, but you can also use these rubrics for, say, an end of semester research project that's going to be very detailed with lots of different categories. So you can add as many criteria as you want here, as many columns as you want for different point levels that you want. This is set up with points that you see here, but you can change this to be, say, point ranges. Maybe I want my proficient to be 5 to 8 points, and competent is 2 to 4 points. You can set it up that way, or if you prefer percentages, you can do that with percentage ranges as well. So it's very flexible, customizable for how you want to design this. The nice thing about it is if you find when you're going through and you're giving a lot of the same comments to students, some feedback that you want to offer, and you feel like you're typing it over and over again, these rubrics are a great way to kind of build a lot of that feedback into this, and it can really help speed up the grading that you do. When you're going through here, instead of having to type that all out again, when you're in the grading view, each of these boxes here is just going to become a clickable option for you to set. And so you do that, you always have the capability of adding additional comments that you want. So it's not limiting you and saying, oh, this is the only thing you can offer. You can give as much detailed feedback as you want, but a lot of this is already kind of built in, and so students understand, oh, why did I miss points on this? Oh, this is where I missed it. So in the future, we don't make that same mistake that's there. It helps, so it can help speed up grading for you, kind of keep you on track. I also find, it streamlines it a little bit where you've got these criteria and it's like, all right, I'm looking at this one, okay, they get this many points. And then this quality factor, okay, this many points here. And so it helps keep you focused on what aspects are you looking for that grade, instead of, if you don't have a rubric, I think people tend to kind of, waffle around a little bit more. Oh, they got some points here, maybe not miss this. maybe you're not as consistent either. So our accreditors more and more are requesting, how are we evaluating our students? How do we show that they understand this? And so these rubrics become a great tool to submit to them, as well as also kind of, providing this ahead of time. In your assignment menu, where you're associating a rubric with an activity, you can have this released to students, before they ever submit anything. And so it's a great tool that also helps, they have a question, how long does this need to be? What are you expecting out of this? If they look at the rubric, it gives a lot of information about what are you looking for them to earn those points. And so it's just clarifying this for everybody. You're all on the same page about what the expectations are for that particular activity. So, feel free. There's a little bit of work in setting this up, but I found overall it's generally a time saver. The other nice thing is, especially if it's a more involved rubric here with lots of different points and stuff, it does the math automatically for you. So you're just clicking on these boxes, it totals those point values up. And then if you're using the gradebook in Blackboard, it's going to automatically import those scores and display them to the students so they can see the feedback very easily. All right, any questions? This rubric tool, again, it's just one of, you see, all of these different options in here. But I feel like a lot of people, they haven't used this very much. But once they start using it, they find, oh, it's a very useful and helpful tool for them. It depends a little bit on the activity. Not every assessment lends itself as well to a rubric. So by no means do you have to use it for everything, every single activity you use in the course. But when you can, it often works out well for both you and the students. All right, if there's no questions, then let me go over quickly what we want for your assignment submission for this module. So this is going to be module 4. We're going to have you pick just one summative or formative assessment in the course that you have in mind. Okay. Frequently, I have people that start to do like the entire semester, or they're giving me their grading rubric of the criteria for the whole semester, where it's like, exams are 30% and lab activities are this percent. I don't want your overall entire semester grading rubric here. Just pick one specific activity and focus on that for us, okay? So just pick one of them that you're doing throughout the entire semester, focus on that. Those course objectives that you were working on in Module 1 for this activity, highlight which particular objectives are you going to be targeting with this activity, okay? What's it going to be focused on? Give us the instructions that you're going to provide to the students. Often people tend to want to submit just like a broad overview. Oh, I'm going to have the students do this, this, and this. Give the actual directions that you're going to provide to the student. And keep in mind, unlike a face-to-face class here, you're not likely there for those quick questions that have to clarify things. So you really want to make sure you have detailed, clear instructions to the students so that they can work on this. They don't have a question, they're sending you an email, they have to wait maybe a day to get some feedback on what you're expecting of them. So give the actual instructions that you're going to provide to your students for that activity, okay? Describe how it's going to help the learner, okay? How is this going to help them understand, self-assess, benefit them in this process, and then give us a grading rubric for this assessment. Again, it can be as simple or as complex as you want to make it. There's a lot of them out there already. If you do a search for, grading rubric for, each specific, subject area, one for a business course versus an art class versus a math class, often are very different. But you can find a lot of these templates out there that you can just take and tweak and adapt for your own use. Okay. You don't have to implement these into Blackboard for this. You can just give me, what the criteria will be in the document that you submit, and maybe in the future then implement that into Blackboard. All right. Questions at all on the expectations or the assignment for this? we'll continue in silence. I guess is no news is good news here. Everybody understands it? All right, great. Yep, thanks, Jasmine. All right, so that will do it for me then, and I will turn it over to Jackie for the last presentation.
Great, Joe. Thank you. I'm going to share my content now. So give me 1 second here. Okay, so hi everyone, welcome. My name is Jackie Mullaney. I am full-time faculty in criminal justice. Very similar to Joe, I've been here since 2007 full-time, 2001 part-time. I am ION certified. I also served for many years as a peer reviewer for online courses, and I am developing, gosh, the 5th course right now for the criminal justice program. So I've been doing this for a while. I'm going to be going over Module 5, and it's really interesting to listen to what both Joe and Beth have been talking about, because it's really, especially particularly much of the stuff that Beth had been talking about in terms of offering different instructional strategies and different methods of delivery. All of that is really connected to this module in terms of supporting learners with accessible course design and universal design, which is all about trying to make sure that every student is on equal footing within the classroom and making sure that we are offering content and assignments in a number of different modes so that we address all the different students with all of their different all of their differences. And this could be in terms of visual issues, audio issues, cognitive differences, just to making sure that the stuff that we are presenting and offering is something that is as universal and accessible to as many different learners as possible. So basically what this presentation is going to be about is not only talking about the importance and value of accessibility and universal design, but also walking you through some strategies in terms of how you can make your content and your classroom and your assignments as accessible and universal as possible. And there's a couple of built-in tools that make this very, very easy. So why is accessibility so important in online learning? Accessibility is important in online learning, and it is important in face-to-face learning. So many of our students have disabilities, and oftentimes they prefer online classes because sometimes in a face-to-face class, oftentimes, especially when we're talking about accommodations, it's something that has to be announced, and whether we're talking about accessibility, particularly in an online environment, it is something that doesn't have to be necessarily announced. An accessible online course allows our students to all participate on equal footing with each other without being held back by any of the disabilities that they may have. Especially when we're talking about accessibility, there's also a legal element to our discussion. Accessibility is required by law. The federal law requires universities to make all courses accessible. The American with Disabilities Act prevents any college or university from excluding disabled students in activities, services, and programs. And part of the goal of Triton College is to make sure that we are as accessibility centered as possible. So what are we going to talk about today? Today I'm going to walk you through different elements of our face-to-face courses and certainly our online courses. The use of textual documents. These can include Word documents, Excel files, PowerPoint presentations, pages on Blackboards. I'll mention PDFs a little bit and look at other documents as well. Even though the individual steps may vary depending on the tool or the document that you're using, you'll see that oftentimes there's some similarities as well, and it's a little bit easier than we may think. First, let's look at Word documents. We're going to start with Word documents because these are probably the most commonly used documents that we use in teaching. Also, the reason we start, we're going to look at Word documents and PowerPoint documents because Microsoft Word has some built-in tools that make accessibility much more easier. The text within Word documents can be read by assistive technology such as screen readers. However, in order for Word documents to be fully accessible, there are some key policies that we need to follow. So first, let's talk about some of these key elements, and then in a couple screens from now, I'll actually show you some of the things that you should be clicking on. First, as you create these files, you should always use headings, and you should use the headings. They're already kind of formatted within Word. You should use the built-in style features in Word that helps people with vision impairments to understand how the document's organized. Screen readers, Braille users can also jump between headings, which makes navigation for them much more easier and efficient than if there were no headings at all. Making text larger and bolder does not necessarily make it a heading, as you should always use the built-in features instead of manually doing it yourself. Some of the same rules apply with PowerPoint. The rules are very, very similar. Also, it's always best to use the built-in templates with PowerPoint because they're already designed to be accessible. Other recommendations include using text for images and headers, and a main concern is to make sure the reading of the order of the elements is correct because it kind of serves as a roadmap. Okay, so here's the slide I was talking about. All Microsoft Office products, including Microsoft Word and PowerPoint and Excel, have an accessibility check built into the program. If you look at the slide that is on the screen right now, you can find the accessibility checker right here that's circled in red. You just have to click that on and then click on first of all, the review button and then the check accessibility button. And then it'll show you whether or not, or the degree that your document is accessible. So the next slide will show you a few examples of what may pop up when you hit that accessibility button. For sure, the button or the panel to the left is what we are all hoping to find. No accessibility issues found. People with disabilities should not have difficulty reading this document. And the slide on the right will tell you not only that you have some accessibility issues, but it will also tell you exactly what it is that you have to address. And we'll go over each of these in terms of what some of the warnings may be and how you can fix that. One of the issues, obviously, is people who have color blindness or perhaps even may be visually impaired. It's important for us to kind of pay attention if we're using color in our instructions and to use it in a different manner. And I know this was something that I had to change in my instructions. Make sure that colors are not your only method of conveying important information. Do not use color alone to convey meaning. Make a distinction, make a comparison, or say something that's going to set it off from the rest of the page. So, because if you categorize something by color alone, those who are colorblind or visually impaired will not benefit from the color distinction. And you can see the three different designs that are offered on this slide. The bad design is complete the question highlighted in green. Again, if the color green is your only distinction, it may be an issue for many of your different learners. Whereas if you go in the best design, you're offering a number of different ways that they can determine, the question that you're talking about. Italicized, green, question one. So that would be the better design versus, or the best design of all three. Another issue, and I should also let you know that as Beth was suggesting and Joe, this is Module 5. All the web links and the resources that I talk about can be found within Module 5. Okay, so another issue that should be paid attention to is color contrast, because this becomes an issue for some of our students as well. There are some colors that when you contrast are not easily seen for individuals, again, who may be visually impaired or who have color. Thank you, Chris, for showing. Thank you, Chris. If you have any questions, just let me know. These individuals need sufficient color contrast to determine imagery. There also may be some specific color combinations that are particularly problematic for people who are colorblind, and there are some resources out there to help you out in terms of distinguishing which color contrasts are better than others. WebAIM is something I have here, and it's also included in this module. It'll make sure that there's enough of a contrast and show how some color contrast can be more problematic than others. Another important tool to use are hyperlinks. You should always aim to write concise and meaningful hyperlinks in documents. It should really kind of clearly let the student, the learner, know exactly what the link is all about. If the link is meaningless or too long, students using screen readers have trouble figuring out where the link will take them. Keep these link text hyperlinks concise, make sure it makes sense out of context, and let the reader know exactly what it is. Images. There's a number of different rules to follow here. The important message here is to make sure that you label them in a manner that they are being used. All images that you include in documents and on pages should include alt text, and oftentimes it comes up automatically. And alt text is invisible text attached to images, and it's basically your opportunity to let the learner know what exactly the image is about. It's required for all images, and writing it can be tricky as it's different for different types of images, whether we're talking about active images, informational images. When we're talking about active images, such as the one shown on the top left, the image serves as a link or a button. In an informational image, and I'll just talk about a few of these examples, such as the one shown in the top right, the image isn't active, but just conveys information. And so the same information should be in the text that is on the image. And so this one would simply say map of the United States. I do have to mention PDFs as well, because I know we all tend to use PDFs in our classroom, and it's something that's been encouraged. Part of the suggestions for PDFs, because they do tend to be very, very problematic for individuals with disabilities. Either don't use them at all or use them as a kind of a secondary source. You should always post instructor-created content directly into a Blackboard content page, and if you want to link to a PDF, make sure it's a secondary form of information. Videos and accessibility. Videos are a popular tool that we use in so many of our classes. I know I do. In almost every module I offer videos. But just like any other element in your online class, you have to make sure that your videos are accessible as well. And many of the elements that we talked about in kind of the static forms of media apply here as well. The material that makes up the video should be accessible, and there are some guidelines that you should follow. First, make sure you use colors carefully and in good contrast. If there is text on the screen, it should be easy to read, large enough font, on the screen long enough to read. You should always add captions to your video, and captions are a form of text alternatives of the audio content synchronized with the video. Captions not only have a text description of the spoken word, but also this description of the background kind of stuff going on as well, the music, the sound, so that every learner is receiving the same information. Always include captions to pre-recorded videos and provide real-time captions for live videos. Popular video host sites such as YouTube and Facebook have captioning options available. So when you upload those videos, those different types of captions become automatically generated for you. You should also have transcripts available. Transcripts can be thought of as an additional form of text versions of the video. Again, it should include not only what is spoken in the video, but descriptions, actions of anything in the background, information that's on screen. A fully accessible video should include both captions and a transcript. And again, sites such as YouTube creates auto-generated transcripts. Let's spend some time looking at the 9 principles of universal design. And I'm going to go through 9 of these. This is part of what you're going to be using for your assignment as well. It talks about creating or using an assignment and which principles of universal design will your assignment be using. So I'm going to give you some examples of these as well. So one of the first principles is equitable use. Here it talks about the design, your course design, your assignment, your content, that it's useful and marketable to people with diverse abilities. The second one is flexibility of use, designing a wide range of different offerings. Number 3 is simple and intuitive, that your design is easy to understand regardless of your learner's experience, knowledge, language skills. The fourth principle is perceptible information. Here in this example would be a video presentation projected in a course that includes captions, transcripts. Number 5 is tolerance for error. Number 6 is low physical effort. An example of this would even be doors to lecture hall that open automatically for people with a wide variety of physical issues. The 7th principle is size and space for approach and use. Number 8 is a community of learners. Here is where our instructional environment promotes interaction and communication among students and between students and faculty. And here we could talk about discussion boards and group exercises. And the final principle is instructional climate. And this is when the instruction is designed to be welcoming, inclusive, and high expectations for all students. Types of universal design, we're really kind of focused here on curriculum and instruction. One of the last slides, which is really the crux of universal design, curriculum, and also something you're going to be talking about in your assignment, and that is the universal design curriculum, the why of learning, the what of learning, and the how of learning, and really kind of ties into the previous 2 discussions as well. So the why of learning, the engagement for purposeful, motivated learners, stimulating interest and motivation for learners. Here we're talking about different ways of engaging with the students, discussion boards, Blackboard Collaborate, group assignments. Multiple means of representation is also the what of learning. This offers the ability to present information and content in a number of different ways. And finally, the how of learning, which provides ways for students to express what they have learned in different ways. Again, all of this talks about universal learning, making sure that our strategies and deliveries are and opportunities for learning and assignments are offered in a number of different ways to provide equal access for all students. And finally, I just want to talk about the assignment a little bit. Develop a course activity, assessment, or activity that demonstrates principles of universal design for learning. The assessment is comprised of the following elements: description of a course activity, course material, assignment, or assessment that you are crafting for your online class, description of which learning network you are addressing, description of the principles of universal design that you are implementing, and an explanation of why you chose this specific course element. So just a couple things. It says develop a course activity. This may be a course activity that that you've already designed, but you just have to kind of tweak a little bit for this assignment. The one thing I do want to say is just don't submit the assignment. Make sure you address the other aspects of this assignment as well. So if you're going to kind of submit your assignment, make sure you talk about, here's the assignment that I'm submitting, here's the different, here's the learning network that it's addressing, here's the principle of universal design that I'm implementing or making sure that this assignment addresses, and this is kind of why I chose this assignment. And oftentimes people will choose this assignment because, for a number of different reasons, because it's the one that that students that I needed to tweak anyway because there's so many questions. It's the one that I thought needed the most kind of redevelopment because it really didn't meet any of the principles of universal design, and I thought I really needed to look at different ways that I can reach a larger audience and to make sure that it is accessible for all my different students. So the main thing is just make sure you not only attach the assignment, but also that you address these other areas as well. That's it for me. Are there any questions? And certainly my email address is included within this module as well, and I'm always available for questions. I can meet with you through Collaborate, through email, whatever works best. So to kind of, I guess, I don't know if Joe, you want to wrap things up, or Beth, but are there any questions in general with these 3 different modules? No questions?
I think we pretty much covered everything then. I appreciate everybody's time and attention today.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to offer either.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, Todd.
Todd? Did you raise and lower? Todd, did you have a question?
No, I'm good. I'm just trying
Okay, perfect. Well, everyone, thank you so much. I think we're all good. All of our information is available in the module. I'll let Shelley give concluding remarks. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you to all the pedagogy instructors. You did a wonderful job, as always. It's always refreshing to join you guys whenever I can. And any questions for me, as you know, you've seen my emails. I sent several emails, reminders, refreshers for things. Do let me know. CT, as you know, provide support, any kind of logistical support, you know, training, access, reminders and deliverables, etc. Anything you need, please feel free to let me know. If you have any questions right now, I'm happy to help, answer. And Todd, I do see your hand. Okay, no hand. Okay, well, I'm again always here to answer any questions. Please feel free to reach out. You will be getting reminders from me as I see, you know. And I don't know if did you guys cover soft deadlines? We're still doing it, right? Right.
I just mentioned that like my deliverable is not due to the end of the semester, but I would be kind of checking periodically to get feedback and any submissions that do come through.
Correct. So we have included some soft deadlines for each module other than BATS, as you know. They're not required, but it just provides you an opportunity if the instructors get a chance to give feedback on that a little bit earlier, so it's not on everybody's shoulders to, you know, receive feedback and take action in a very short amount of time. So if possible, would like to do that. That's an opportunity to, kind of pace your assignment submission. But other than that, you all know your deliverable due date, so please keep working. And again, we're here for your help. Okay. All right, everyone. Nothing else. We'll just conclude this session. Monday, the same content, the Monday will be on units 2 and 3. So that is facilitated by our instruction designer, Kevin Foreman. So he's going to talk a little bit about unit 2 and 3 deliverables. Okay. All right. And we are recording this, so I'm going to send an email to others. If you want to rewatch it, and those who missed it, they can access the recordings. And let me see if there's any. Okay. All right. Well, have a great weekend. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
everybody. Take care.
Bye, everyone.